They lined up every prisoner for execution, but the alien child chose the human. Rain hit the execution square like 1,000 tiny hammers. Cold, hard, unending. Floodlights cut through the downpour and turned the mud to silver. Jonah Rook knelt with 18 others. Shackles bit into his wrists. His breath came in white puffs. He tasted rust and rain. 3 days ago, he had hauled illegal med packs to the sick miners on Virel 9. He knew the risk. He did it anyway. Now the Herald read charges in a flat voice. Smuggling. Disruption of commerce. Aiding unauthorized persons, the crowd murmured. Guards stood still as statues. The overseer's dais rose above them, a black tooth in the storm. Under a covered gallery, envoys watched from the dry. They wore dark cloaks and careful faces. Among them stood envoy Saris Il. Her skin showed thin veins of pale gold. 2 children stayed close at her side. Lightning flashed. For a second, Jonah saw her eyes, calm, sharp, measuring. He tested the cuffs again. No give, no plan. He hated dying without a plan. He dropped his head and let the rain wash the grit from his scalp. He thought of the miners who would live because of the supplies. He thought of the ones who would not. His jaw tightened. If this was it, at least he had tried. The Herald lifted a hand. Sentences to be carried out at... A small voice cut the rain like a knife. Mama, that one? All eyes turned. The younger child on the gallery pointed straight at Jonah. Her finger did not shake. Her sister pulled her sleeve, but she would not lower her hand. Jonah blinked water from his lashes. Memory slammed into him. The market collapse. A scream under falling stone. Smoke and dust. A small blue-gold face streaked with ash. He had dug with bleeding hands, found the girl, carried her out, and slipped away before the guards arrived. He had not looked back. Envoy Sarah stepped to the rail. Her mask of duty cracked for half a heartbeat. He saw the human thing beneath it. Fear, relief, gratitude. The plaza went silent except for the rain drumming on stone. Envoy, the magistrate growled, scales shining wet. These prisoners are under Virel jurisdiction. Saris's voice was a clean edge. By pact statute, I invoke witness sanctuary for the human identified by my daughter. He is material to crimes against civilians. Gasps rolled through the crowd. The Herald stalled. Guards glanced at one another. The magistrate's jaw worked. Highly irregular. Then file your complaint with the Pact Council, Sarah said. I will answer it there. Jonah's heart thumped hard. He did not dare hope, but the word sanctuary burned warm inside him. A guard knelt, keys shaking only a little. The cuff lock clicked. Cold metal left his skin. He flexed numb fingers. Blood returned like needles. The other prisoners stared, some with envy, some with awe. One older man nodded once, as if to say, go. Jonah wanted to stand and shout that he would come back for them. He did not. The square was a throat. The regime would swallow him whole for one wrong word. By order of Envoy Saris Il, the human is remanded to diplomatic custody, the Herald called, finding his courage again. All other sentences proceed. A roar of rain swallowed the rest. 2 guards took Jonah by the arms and lifted him to his feet. He caught the little girl's eyes. She gave a small, solemn smile. He tried to smile back, but his mouth would not obey. He looked to Saris. She held his gaze. Something passed between them. A silent pact. A promise of consequences. They guided him off the killing ground and through a tunnel of wet bodies and bright lenses. The crowd shouted questions, names, insults, prayers. Jonah kept his head down and his steps steady. He had learned long ago that courage was often just walking forward when your legs wanted to fold. At the transport pad, he glanced once over his shoulder. The platform loomed in gray light. Figures knelt where he had knelt. The storm did not care. The law did not care. He hated that. He stored it like a coal inside his chest. The shuttle doors opened. Warm air reached for him. Saris waited in the entry, rain beating on her cloak, gold veins faintly glowing. Up close, her calm looked like a shield she had carried for years. Jonah Rook, she said. You are under my protection. He nodded. Words were hard. Why? He managed. She looked toward the square. Because you cared when others didn't. A beat. Softer. And because my daughter pointed at the truth. The doors sealed. The shuttle rose. The square shrank to a smear of light in the storm. Jonah pressed his palms to his knees and breathed slow and deep. He was alive. For now, he thought of the girl's small hand. He thought of the word sanctuary. He thought of the debt that ran both ways. Outside, lightning walked across the clouds. Inside, a new fight started to form, bright and dangerous in the space between a human smuggler and an alien envoy who had just gambled everything. The shuttle cut through the clouds like a blade. Inside, the cabin hummed with quiet tension. Jonah Rook sat across from envoy Saris Ale, wrists still marked by the shackles. He could feel her eyes on him, measuring, calculating, yet not unkind. The rain on the hull softened to a whisper as they rose above the storm line. Through the viewport, Virel Nime sprawled below, gray oceans, rust-colored continents, lightning crawling like veins across the planet's skin. Jonah had seen war zones that looked friendlier. Saris spoke first. "You were smuggling medical supplies." "Why?" He looked up. "Because the miners were dying." "That was not your concern." "It became my concern the moment I saw them coughing blood while the companies counted credits." Her expression didn't change, but something flickered in her golden eyes, curiosity, maybe even respect. "You're a strange species," she murmured. "People keep saying that," Jonah replied dryly. The shuttle docked in the alien embassy spire, a vertical tower of glass and glowing veins of blue energy. Inside, the air smelled of citrus and metal. Guards in flowing robes watched him like hawks as Saris led the way through silent corridors lined with living lights. She guided him into a private suite, spacious, clean, painfully elegant. The walls shimmered faintly, adjusting color with her mood. A real bed. Hot water? It felt obscene after the mud pit he'd just escaped. Saris turned to him. "You'll stay here under diplomatic protection until the council concludes its review. You will not leave this sector without my permission." Jonah gave a short nod, not planning to run. "Running got me here." A faint smile curved her lips. "That's refreshingly honest." She paused. "You saved my daughter. I was there. I had hands. That's all." Most would have walked away. Most aren't me. Her eyes held his for a long second before she turned away. "Dinner is at 1900. You'll be briefed afterward." He watched her go, her cloak trailing golden light across the floor. When the door hissed shut, he exhaled for what felt like the first time in days. Hours later, Jonah stood by the tall window. The city below was alive with moving lights, hover trams weaving through rain, neon signs pulsing in foreign symbols. He could see the execution square from here, just a dull gray scar on the horizon. He didn't feel free, just borrowed. A soft chime announced her return. Saris entered wearing simpler clothes, deep indigo fabric that shimmered like oil. She carried 2 glasses filled with something amber and warm. "Two unexpected rescues," she said. Jonah raised an eyebrow. "You're drinking to a condemned man?" "I'm drinking to the fact that he isn't condemned anymore." They sat across from each other. The silence between them wasn't hostile. It was alive, charged with unspoken questions. "Your people follow instinct," Saris said at last. "You act first, think later. Does that ever end well?" "Sometimes. When the instinct's right. And when it's wrong, then we fix it," Jonah said. "Humans break things, but we fix them too." That made her laugh softly, the first real laugh he'd heard in weeks. It was like crystal breaking in sunlight. He found himself studying her, the faint glow tracing her skin, the way her voice carried calm even when she challenged him. She wasn't like the bureaucrats he'd met. She was something else, poised between courage and calculation. Saris noticed his stare. "You think I made a mistake, don't you?" "I think you risked everything for a stranger." "Not for a stranger," she said quietly. "For a man who carried a child through fire when no one else did." Jonah didn't know what to say to that. Words would only cheapen it. Outside, thunder rolled again, distant now but steady, the same storm still raging somewhere beyond the glass. Saris set down her glass. "Rest, Commander. Tomorrow the real battle begins," he frowned. "Battle? Every planet fights in its own way," she said. "Here we fight with words, and right now half this city wants you gone." Jonah smirked faintly. "Then they'll have to try harder." Saris turned to leave, but paused in the doorway. "For your sake, I hope your defiance is as strong as your instincts." When she was gone, Jonah looked out at the city once more. Lightning traced across the clouds. He could almost hear the gears of politics turning, already grinding toward him. He smiled to himself, tired but unbroken. He'd survived worse storms than this, and if Saris Ale thought she could fight this battle alone, She was about to find out just how stubborn a human could be. The next morning, light spilled through the tall glass wall like liquid gold. Viral's storm had finally broken, leaving behind a restless silence. Jonah Rook woke before dawn, the habits of a soldier still etched into his bones. He moved quietly around the suite, staring at the strange art that seemed to breathe on the walls. Everything in this place felt alive and watching. He caught his reflection in the window, unshaven, bruised, still wearing borrowed clothes that didn't belong to him. He looked like a man caught between worlds. Not free, not captive, just waiting. The door slid open with a gentle hiss. Envoy Sarah Sale entered, wrapped in diplomatic gray. Her composure was perfect again, every line of her face calm and unreadable. "You didn't sleep," she observed. "Not much. Hard to rest when half the planet wants you dead." She ignored the jab and handed him a thin silver band, a translator cuff. "It will help you during today's hearing. Stay silent unless spoken to. I'll do the talking." "Sure, I'm good at being unpopular." That almost drew a smile. "You'll fit in well then." The hearing chamber was carved from smooth black stone that shimmered faintly with embedded light. Officials sat in a half-circle above, robes gleaming like oil on water. Cameras floated silently, recording everything. Jonah felt like an insect under glass. The lead adjudicator, a reptilian with golden eyes, stared down at Saris. "Envoy Ale, you have claimed sanctuary for a condemned human accused of interplanetary trade violations. Justify your action." Saris bowed slightly. "Commander Rook acted in defense of civilian lives. The Pact Accords recognize humanitarian exceptions." "The Accords," the reptilian hissed, "do not excuse chaos. Your gesture undermines order." Jonah clenched his fists, but Saris's glance warned him, not yet. She spoke calmly. "Order means nothing without compassion. This man risked death to save children. One of them was my own." A murmur ran through the chamber. Cameras zoomed closer. Jonah could almost feel the political temperature shifting. The adjudicator's gaze slid to Jonah. "Human, do you confirm these claims?" He stood slowly. "I didn't know who she was. Didn't matter. There were screams and I had two hands. That's it. You acted against our laws. Your laws would have left them buried," Jonah said. "Sometimes the right thing and the legal thing aren't the same." Gasps rippled through the spectators. Saris winced, but only slightly. The adjudicator leaned back, tail twitching. "Humans, always believing feeling outweighs structure. Structure without heart breaks people," Jonah shot back. "We've learned that the hard way." For a long moment, no one spoke. The translator cuff vibrated against his wrist, detecting tension. Saris finally broke the silence. "This man speaks with honesty, not rebellion. If truth sounds dangerous, perhaps we should examine what we fear." Whispers again. Even the judge seemed unsettled. After a heavy pause, the council deferred judgment. The human would remain under Saris's custody, pending further review. Outside the chamber, Saris exhaled slowly. "You nearly got yourself executed again," Jonah shrugged. "Guess I'm consistent." She turned on him, voice low but fierce. "You don't understand how delicate this is. Every word you speak ripples through 100 political networks." He met her gaze evenly. "Then maybe they need to hear something real for once." Her anger faltered, replaced by something harder to define. Admiration, maybe frustration twisted with curiosity. "You are impossible. Usually," Jonah said with a grin. "But I grow on people," Saris sighed. "Try not to grow on the wrong ones." Back at the embassy, she debriefed with her aides while Jonah watched from the corner. Her efficiency was a kind of beauty, sharp, graceful, utterly precise. Yet when her eyes met his, that calm surface rippled. Later that night, as the city lights flickered beneath them, Saris approached him on the balcony. "You don't make things easy, human." "Never claimed to," Jonah said, staring at the skyline. "But easy doesn't change anything." The wind carried the smell of rain and metal. For a while they just stood there, two survivors caught between storms. Saris finally spoke. "Do you regret it?"
Saving her?
He turned toward her, the memory of that terrified child flashing in his mind. "Not for a second. Even if it cost you your life?" He smiled faintly. "That's the point of having one, to use it when it counts." Saris looked at him for a long moment. The gold veins in her skin pulsed softly in the dim light. "Your kind fascinates me," she whispered. You build fire where others see ashes. Jonah leaned on the railing, eyes still on the city. That's what humans do. We keep the light burning, even when it hurts. Neither moved. The storm had ended, but both knew something bigger was coming. A war not of weapons, but of hearts, laws, and loyalties. Some lines, Jonah thought, aren't meant to be crossed. And some were meant to be rewritten. The embassy felt quieter after the hearing, but Jonah could tell it was the kind of quiet that came before another storm. Every corridor whispered. Every door seemed to hold its breath. Even the glowing walls dimmed their color when he passed, as if the building itself disapproved of him being there. Envoy Saris L. was nowhere to be seen all morning. Jonah used the time to pace the suite like a caged wolf. He tried the news feeds, but every channel repeated the same headline. Human smuggler under diplomatic protection, council divided. His face, caught mid-blink in the rain, stared back at him from every broadcast. He switched it off. A polite chime broke the silence. A young aide, pale-skinned, anxious, stood at the door holding a folded uniform. Envoy Ale instructed me to deliver this, she said softly. She requests your presence for the evening council dinner. Jonah raised an eyebrow. Dinner? With the people who wanted me executed yesterday? Yes, the aide replied, almost apologetic. It is protocol. When he entered the great hall hours later, conversation stilled for half a second. The room glowed with amber light reflected from crystalline pillars. Dozens of dignitaries in layered robes turned to see the human enter. The living scandal. Sarah stood near the head of the long table, composed as ever. The gold veins along her skin glimmered faintly beneath soft lighting. Commander Rook, she greeted, formal but not cold. You're on time. That's unusual for your kind, Jonah smirked. Maybe I'm evolving. A few guests chuckled, but most simply stared. He could feel their curiosity like heat on his skin. As dinner began, the conversation twisted around trade routes, mineral rights, and regulation codes. Jonah said nothing. He didn't understand half of it, and the half he did understand made him angry. These people discussed famine and medicine like numbers on a chart. Saris caught his expression. Careful, she murmured beside him. Your thoughts are showing. Then they can read them, Jonah said quietly. Maybe someone should. The alien diplomat on Saris's other side, a tall, multi-eyed creature named Ambassador Vren, leaned forward, voice dripping with disdain. Humans always confuse passion for purpose. That is why your species remains primitive. Jonah gave him a calm look. Primitive? Maybe, but at least we bleed for the right reasons. A hush fell over the table. Even Saris froze. Then, unexpectedly, she smiled, just slightly. He does have a point, Ambassador. The tension broke like glass under heat. The conversation resumed, thinner now, but not hostile. When the meal ended and the guests drifted away, Saris lingered. She motioned for Jonah to follow her through a side door into a small courtyard garden. Night air rolled in, carrying the scent of metal rain and alien flowers glowing faint blue. You shouldn't have spoken that way, she said at last. I spoke the truth. Truth isn't the issue. Timing is, he looked at her. You regret saving me? Her golden eyes flashed. No. But I regret that the universe doesn't understand why I did. They stood facing each other under the dim light of the twin moons. For the first time since they'd met, she looked less like a diplomat and more like a person. Tired, human in all the ways that mattered. Why did you? Jonah asked softly. She hesitated. Then quietly. Because I couldn't watch another good man die for caring. The words hung between them like electricity. Jonah felt something shift, something fragile and real. He wanted to thank her, to say something that would make the moment less heavy, but all he managed was, guess that makes two of us who don't belong here. Sarah stepped closer, close enough that he could see the reflection of the moons in her eyes. You're wrong, she said. You belong exactly where you make a difference, even if the world hates you for it. He didn't move. Neither did she. The silence between them deepened until the distant hum of the city faded away. Then her communicator buzzed sharply. The spell broke. She glanced at it. Her expression hardened instantly. What is it? Jonah asked. Ambassador Vren, she said, eyes narrowing. He's requested an emergency session. He's challenging my authority to keep you under protection. Jonah sighed. That didn't take long. Saris turned toward him. This isn't a simple political game anymore, Jonah. They want to use you to destroy me. He smiled faintly. Then let's give them indigestion. Despite herself, Saris laughed in a soft, unguarded sound. You humans are unbelievable. We get that a lot. She looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. Rest tonight. Tomorrow we fight back, but not with weapons. With proof. Proof of what? Her voice dropped to a whisper. That compassion isn't weakness. As she left, Jonah stood alone beneath the glowing trees, the rain starting again in thin, silvery sheets. He realized, with a strange ache in his chest, that he didn't just owe Saris his life anymore. He owed her his loyalty, and maybe, just maybe, something even more dangerous. Morning on Virel 9 was pale and brittle. The twin suns were up, but their light felt thin, like warmth stretched too far. Jonah Rook stood by the window, watching storm clouds crawl across the horizon again. He had learned something about this planet. The sky never stayed calm for long. The door chimed. Saris Ale entered, already dressed in her diplomatic armor. Elegant robe, calm eyes, voice smooth as glass. But Jonah had spent enough time around soldiers to recognize the tension under her stillness. She was bracing for a fight. They moved the session forward, she said, setting a data slate on the table. Friend filed a motion with the High Council. He wants your sanctuary revoked. Jonah poured himself coffee from the small service unit. So, we walk into a room full of people who want me executed. Again. Sounds familiar. Saris didn't smile. This time they'll come for both of us. He met her gaze. Then they'll need a bigger rope. The council hall blazed with white light. Rows of banners shimmered like liquid flame. The moment Jonah and Saris entered, every conversation died. Hollow cameras turned. The air smelled of ozone and accusation. Ambassador Vren stood at the central podium, his long fingers folded in a mock salute. Honored Council, he began, voice oiled with confidence. Envoy Ale has compromised her position. She has sheltered a criminal, a human smuggler who defied trade law, endangered planetary order, and now contaminates diplomatic integrity. He gestured sharply toward Jonah. There he stands, proof that chaos still breeds among the stars. Jonah leaned toward Saris and muttered, I liked him better when he was pretending to be polite. Don't speak, she whispered. But when Vren continued, the human's presence here invites anarchy, and the envoy's attachment to him makes her judgment suspect. Jonah couldn't stay silent. He stepped forward. Attachment? His voice carried easily in the acoustic chamber. You mean gratitude? The kind your kind can't understand? The crowd stirred. Vren's eyes flashed. You are out of order. Yeah, Jonah said. Humans do that sometimes. Comes with having a spine. Laughter rippled through the chamber, brief but real. Saris's mouth twitched, half warning, half admiring. Enough, the High Adjudicator said, voice like thunder. We are not here for comedy. Envoy Ale, your defense? Saris stepped forward. Her calm was gone, replaced by something fiercer. Ambassador Vren accuses me of corruption, she said. But my only crime is compassion. This man risked his life for civilians our laws abandoned. He is no threat. He is a reminder that justice without mercy is tyranny. Her words struck like sparks on dry wood. Murmurs spread through the crowd. Vren hissed, You endanger the order that protects us. Order built on fear isn't protection, Saris snapped. It's control, the room erupted. Voices overlapped, some furious, some agreeing. Jonah watched her stand tall amid the storm and realized just how much he'd risked. Not just career. Not just power. Herself? The adjudicator raised a clawed hand for silence. Enough. His golden eyes turned to Jonah. Human. If we allow you to live under alien protection, what guarantee do we have you will not turn this generosity into chaos? Jonah met his gaze steadily. You don't. He paused, letting the shock settle. But you don't have a guarantee for anyone. Not even your own kind. All you have are choices. And sometimes the right choice isn't safe. It's just right. The chamber went utterly still. Even Vren froze. The adjudicator leaned back slowly. You speak boldly for one so temporary. Jonah shrugged. Mortality keeps us honest. It was reckless. It was dangerous. And it worked. The moment cracked. The council no longer united in contempt. The adjudicator finally spoke. This council will deliberate. Until then, the human remains under Envoy Ale's custody. Friend's jaw tightened. You make a mistake. Then we will own it, the adjudicator said. Unlike some. Outside, Saris exhaled for what felt like the first time all day. You just gambled both our lives on one speech. Jonah smiled faintly. Seemed to work. You don't understand, she said, voice trembling slightly. They weren't just deciding your fate. They were deciding mine. I know, he said. That's why I didn't stay quiet. For a heartbeat, they just stared at each other. Two stubborn souls held together by something stronger than fear. Then Saris looked away. You humans, you turn every disaster into a declaration. Jonah chuckled. And you keep giving us microphones. She laughed softly, the sound almost a sigh. Don't ever do that again. No promises. They walked out into the afternoon light. Behind them, the council hall still hummed with the echoes of their defiance. Ahead, the city waited, restless, uncertain, alive. For the first time since his capture, Jonah felt something stir in his chest that wasn't anger or exhaustion. Hope. It wasn't safe. But it was his. And it was enough to start a fire the whole world would soon see. 3 days later, the summons came at dawn. A coded message appeared on the glass wall above Jonah's bed, the letters glowing faint blue. Commander Jonah Rook, by decree of the Elian High Council, you are invited to undergo the trial of understanding. He read it twice before looking toward Saris. She stood by the doorway, already awake, already composed. But her eyes gave her away, a mixture of pride, fear, and something deeper that neither of them had dared to name. So this is it, Jonah said. Your people's way of deciding if I'm worth the air I breathe. It's more than that, she replied softly. It's how they decide if you belong. Do I? She didn't answer. The trials aren't meant to humiliate you, Jonah. They're meant to reveal who you are when everything else is stripped away. He snorted. Been stripped plenty of times already. Guess I'll survive. But when the doors of the chamber of resonance closed behind him, even his sarcasm felt small. The chamber was a cathedral of sound and light. No guards, no weapons, only a ring of hovering crystals that pulsed like living hearts. The Archon himself presided, tall, silver-marked, his head-tails draped in ceremonial chains. Human, the Archon intoned. These trials are not of strength but of spirit. You will face 3 questions. Answer them with your soul, not your tongue. Jonah straightened. All right, let's get philosophical. The first crystal flared. A voice like wind spoke. What drives you when hope is gone? He closed his eyes. Images came unbidden. The miners coughing in the dark, the girl in the rubble, Saris defying the crowd. When hope's gone, he said, you move anyway, because someone else might still need you to. The crystal dimmed. A low hum filled the air. Approval or warning? He couldn't tell. The second crystal lit brighter, swirling with stormlight. What is mercy to you? Jonah thought of the prisoners left kneeling in the rain, their faces haunting him every night since. Mercy, he said, voice rough, is the difference between justice and revenge. One heals, the other feeds the dark. The hum deepened, resonating through his chest like a heartbeat. Then came the final crystal. Its light was gentle but steady. What do you fear losing most? He hesitated. There were many answers. His freedom, his past, his planet, but only one came out. Her. The crystal's glow rippled outward like a tide. The sound in the chamber rose to a harmonious chord that filled the air, the ground, his skin. Then silence. The Archon stepped forward. You have answered not as a warrior, but as a being capable of truth. The trial is complete, Jonah blinked. That's it? The Archon's mouth curved faintly. For most, it is far too much. When he emerged, Saris was waiting at the foot of the stairs, her composure shattered for once. Well, I'm still in one piece, he said. So either I passed or they're saving the fireworks for later. She laughed, the first real laugh he'd heard since the square. You passed, Jonah Rook. You passed. He didn't realize she'd moved until she was in his arms, the scent of rain and ozone clinging to her hair. They said you spoke with clarity, she whispered. They've never used that word for a human before. Guess I'm setting trends. That night, the embassy gardens glowed under lanterns that pulsed with golden light. The air shimmered with quiet music, an ancient alien song about courage and renewal. Jonah stood before the gathered crowd, wearing formal robes tailored to his human frame. They itched, but he didn't care. Saris approached, radiant, her robes woven with threads that mirrored the veins of her skin. The Archon raised his staff. Tonight we witness what has never been before, the bonding of two worlds sealed by the courage of one who crossed every boundary. Jonah reached for Saris's hand. It was warm, trembling slightly. "Do you, Jonah, Rook of Earth," the Archon said, "pledge to honor the ways of the aliens, to seek harmony, even in difference?" "I do," Jonah said clearly. "And do you, Saris Ael of Aelia Prime, pledge to embrace the spirit of humanity, to act with heart, even in uncertainty?" "I do," she said, voice steady. The Archon smiled, then let the two paths intertwine. A low hum rose as the energy from the crystals wrapped around their hands, forming a ring of shimmering light. When it faded, they stood joined, not just as envoy and rescued smuggler, but as something new entirely. Applause filled the garden. The children cheered. The dignitaries, even those who had once whispered against her, stood in silent awe. Jonah leaned close. "Was that a wedding or a peace treaty?" "Both," Saris whispered, "and maybe something bigger." Above them, the night sky split with shooting stars, a meteor drift glowing like a blessing. Jonah had seen countless suns rise and fall across the galaxy, but none had ever felt this alive. He had come to this world in chains. Now he stood free, not because he had fought harder, but because someone had believed he was worth saving. And as the crowd's music rose around them, he realized that belief could start revolutions. Months passed, and the galaxy learned to whisper a new name, the Rook Accord, the treaty signed on the night a human and an alien joined hands under twin moons. What began as scandal had turned into symbol. Two species that had once shared nothing but suspicion were now building a fragile bridge of trust. Jonah never liked the attention. He'd spent most of his life in shadows, moving cargo under threat of death. Now people wanted to shake his hand, record his voice, and name him Ambassador of Unity. The title made him laugh. "I'm just a man who refused to shut up," he told Saris one evening, watching the lights of the city below. Saris had grown quieter since the bonding ceremony. Not sad, thoughtful. Her robes no longer shimmered with the full gold of authority. She had resigned her diplomatic seat to live freely, away from the political stage that had nearly destroyed them both. But the galaxy hadn't let them fade. Reporters, scholars, even priests had come, each wanting to see the couple who had defied centuries of law. In the middle of it all, Saris carried a new kind of secret, one that pulsed gently beneath her skin. Jonah would wake to find her sitting by the window, one hand resting on her stomach, eyes lost in the dawn. "He kicks when I think too much," she said with a soft smile. "Then he's already on my side," Jonah replied. When the time came, they returned to Aelia Prime, Saris's homeworld, a planet of shining towers and oceans that glowed at night. The same Archon who had judged Jonah now stood beside the medical team, curiosity and wonder replacing his once icy reserve. The delivery was long, grueling, and terrifying. Jonah stayed by Saris's side through every minute of it, gripping her hand, whispering every clumsy encouragement he could think of. She cursed in 3 languages, 2 of them human, and then suddenly there was light. A cry. A heartbeat. Dr. Vayan lifted the newborn, small, perfect, with pale blue skin and soft human features. Thin, luminous head tails curled at the sides of his neck, glowing faintly like tiny lanterns. Saris laughed through her tears. "He's beautiful." Jonah couldn't speak. The child's tiny fingers wrapped around his thumb with impossible strength. He had seen planets burn, ships break apart, empires collapse, but nothing like this. "What will we name him?" Saris asked, her voice trembling. Jonah smiled. "Kyle, it means light that survives in your language, doesn't it?" "Yes," she whispered. "And it suits him." News of Kale's birth spread faster than the fastest jump ship. Across star systems, people argued, celebrated, protested, prayed. For the first time, the galaxy saw proof that life could grow from love instead of conquest. Of course, not everyone was ready to accept it. Extremist factions called it blasphemy. A few demanded the child be taken for study. The council, fearing unrest, offered protection, but Saris refused to hide. "My son will not grow in shadows," she said. "He will walk in the light, both of them." Jonah backed her without hesitation. Together they built a home on the cliffs of Virel 9, overlooking the sea that once carried the echoes of an execution ground. The same rain that had nearly ended Jonah's life now sang against their windows every evening. Kyle grew fast, too fast. At 6 months he was already curious, eyes glowing faint gold when he laughed. Sometimes he babbled in human vowels. Other times in the melodic hum of Saris's native tongue. When he touched Jonah's face, the headtails pulsed brighter, sinking to the rhythm of his father's heartbeat. "See?" Saris said once, watching them. "He bridges even silence." But peace, Jonah knew, was never simple. Rumors reached them of unrest. Border systems refusing to honor the new accords. Captains threatening rebellion. A new delegation requested that Saris return as advisor to the Human Relations Council. Jonah sighed. "They just can't let you go, can they?" She smiled sadly. "You married trouble, remember? I thought I married an alien diplomat. You did. Then you taught her how to be human." They stood together on the balcony that night, Kale asleep in Saris's arms. The sea shimmered beneath twin moons. Jonah slipped an arm around her waist. "You think he'll be safe?" he asked quietly. "Not always," she admitted. "But he'll be strong. Stronger than both of us." Jonah looked at the sleeping child, half human, half alien, entirely miracle. "Then we did something right." "Something impossible," she corrected. He smiled. "Same thing." Years later, the story of the child of 2 sons would be told in schools across half the galaxy. A legend of courage, compassion, and defiance. Some called it myth. Others called it prophecy. But those who had stood in that execution square remembered a condemned human, a fearless envoy, a single act of mercy that changed the stars. And on quiet nights, when rain whispered against their windows, Jonah Rook would still wake, look at Saris beside him, and whisper the words that had kept him alive through every storm. Hope isn't something you find. It's something you build. Outside, the first rays of dawn spilled over the horizon. 2 suns rising on one world, warming a family that should never have existed. But they did. And because of them, the galaxy would never be the same again.